Exercise 505 gives you situations where you'll be using the property from the previous exercise. You will be using the sine rule to find an angle. Now, it's fairly obvious here in this example that if we're finding that angle, then our answer has to be a number between 90 and 180 degrees. It has to be what we classify as an obtuse angle. However, we know that our calculator will only give us the acute angles. So we will have to make the adjustment to the calculator answer in order for us to be giving the appropriate answer for this situation. Now, remember we are using the sine rule. We can label our angles on our sides A and B respectively. So since this angle is the angle we're finding, it makes sense to call this angle A, and this side would be lower A. Sorry. This angle is the other angle involved, and we'll call it B, and this side B. We can now write the sine rule, and what that enables us to do is to create an equation to solve by simply substituting our values from the diagram into the equation. Cross multiply, you'll see, gives us that sine of the angle is going to be 17 times the sine of 24. However, we would normally be multiplying by 8. We don't want multiply by 8 here, so we will be dividing by 8. This now means to find the angle, we would take sine inverse of this calculation. I'll pause the video and get it on the calculator and then talk about it. So as you can see, I've put that onto the calculator, sine inverse 17 times sine 24. I did notice the first time through that it didn't put that closed bracket in for me, and it actually needs that bracket there for it to give you the correct answer. The first time I did, like I said, it didn't have that bracket there, and when I pressed equal, after having put the 8 in, that it sent an error message. So if you get error when you do this, it could be because you haven't closed the bracket there on the 24. So as you can see, I'm getting, I'll just write it as 59.8 degrees for now. You could write a note, but this is not obtuse. Just to show the marker that this is the answer you got from your calculator, and you know there is more to do, there is another step, and you could write, therefore, the angle has to be 180 degrees minus 59.8, which is, what was that? It's almost 60, so that's 120.2 degrees, which is obtuse, which is a number between 90 and 180. So you can see here it's saying make the necessary adjustment. This would be classified as the necessary adjustment. Don't leave your answer here at 59.8 because that's clearly not answering this particular question. Okay, with this next example, it's not so much a problem because the angle we're trying to find is obtuse, but however there is a problem. If we look very carefully at this and think about, yes, we're finding an angle, and yes, we've got two angles and two sides, which would normally lend itself to the sine rule, which is correct. And so our next step would be to label the angle. So if I label this angle A and this side A, if I then label the unknown angle B, that gives me that this side over here is B. Now this is two unknowns. In this situation, we need to go one step further and say, well, I'll have to think about angle C, knowing that this 13.5 is side C. Now, that will enable me to write A on sine A is C on sine C, and only have one unknown. Let's just confirm that. That's 19 on sine 122 is lowercase c, which is your 13.5, on sine of c. So you can see now that in an equation I only have the one unknown. And again, that angle C is acute, so I won't have any problem with what the calculator tells me is the answer there. However, it doesn't answer the question. Theta is actually answer B. In addition to my solution, I will have to do another step, but that will just be using angle sum of a triangle to finally find theta, which is angle B. I'll pause the video and have a look at and do some of those calculations and come back and talk about it. So, set up the equation, substituted into this equation, cross-multiplied to find C, well actually the sine of C, so C is equal to the sine inverse of this calculation, the 13.5. If you look at the calculator now, you can see I've put in sine inverse 13.5 sines, just cutting it out there, 122 on 19, and it's giving me 37 degrees. Now I'm happy with that, that angle C is 37 degrees, because remember, it's this actual angle here. However, that wasn't the angle required in the question. We'll then say theta is 180 minus the 122 minus the 37. Why? Because of the angle sum of a triangle. And when you do that, you can see that you get 21 degrees. So, that's just another example of how the questions can vary. However, there's nothing in that you haven't or wouldn't be able to make a connection to. It's very much about, so much maths is very much about you assessing the situation you have and making a connection to some rule or property or idea that we've come across before. So you should be right now to do exercise 505 and just be very careful. Make a note of any that you attempt, that you have trouble with, and ask me about those in class.